The Columbia River Basin, a massive watershed and terminus for hundreds of streams and rivers, reaching as far east as Yellowstone National Park. The Great Columbia River is the lifeline that connects this vast ecosystem with the Pacific Ocean. For centuries, it provided a vital thoroughfare for salmon and steelhead migrating to their native spawning tributaries. With over 200 years of human expansion and development, the river has endured many changes, resulting in momentous impacts on fish, habitat, and native culture. Today, new efforts and strategies are underway to recover its lost glory. Way of the Columbia takes you upriver to explore its many tributaries and learn more about this important work.
Today on Way of the Columbia, we explore a program known as Steelhead Kelp Reconditioning. A program aimed at boosting the number of steelhead that spawn more than one time. Recognizing the dramatic loss of kelp returns, Yakima Nation Fisheries developed a program to intercept outbound adults. They are then reconditioned in a hatchery setting until they're released to spawn in the wild.
So yeah, what is a steelhead? You know a rainbow trout. You've probably caught a rainbow trout, and a steelhead's a rainbow trout that's gone out to the ocean, and because the ocean has such a richer food environment, it comes back the size of a salmon. So if you can get yourself up to the point where you can survive the trip to the ocean, then you can grow a lot larger there. Why do you want to grow larger? Because if a little trout has 1,000 eggs, and each of the eggs is this big with enough yolk to just barely get those young up and going, you come back as a big fish, you might have 5,000 eggs, and they're a lot bigger, they're a lot richer. When your fry come out of the gravel, they're going to be a lot bigger and have a jump, competing with other fish, avoiding predation. And so if the survival rate's high enough, you got a real advantage going out to the ocean in terms of number of offspring. So if you think of salmon, they put their all into that one-time spawning. Steelhead and also Atlantic salmon, they can actually survive after they spawn, but they're worn out, low in energy. If they can make it back to the ocean and fatten up, they can come back a second, or we've even have tag fish that have gone back and forth 3 times. Those fish that go back to the ocean and then come back for a second or third spawning, those are kelts. So yeah, the kelts, after they spawn, they're worn out. They had to travel 700 plus miles often to get from the ocean to their spawning areas. They've had to dig redds in the gravel with their own tails. The males have been sparring with each other on the spawning grounds. They're worn out, and they come into the kelp reconditioning center looking long, skinny, pretty beat up, high risks of disease. They're just tired. Now the neat thing about kelp reconditioning is you're taking a wild fish that you know has survived, spawned once, you're giving it a boost, and then you're letting it back out to go find its own habitat, to find its own mate, to do all those things that a wild fish is going to do. And for steelhead, those are our best and strongest steelhead. So it's a way to use a hatchery to give a boost to proven wild fish.
We're currently in Prosser Hatchery, located just outside the town of Prosser, about a half-mile below Chandler Dam.
So this is our kelp reconditioning project on the Yakima River, which is the largest and oldest kelp reconditioning project in the Columbia Basin. But we're doing this throughout the Columbia. There's a project on the Upper Columbia at Winthrop Hatchery, reconditioning steelhead up there, and we're working on getting a project going up on the Snake River that's at Nez Perce Tribal Hatchery and Dworshak National Fish Hatchery, where we're reconditioning a fish from the Snake River. So this is a technique that was established here on the Yakima and now is being implemented at other locations on the Columbia to aid in steelhead recovery. Steelhead are the anadromous form of rainbow trout. Anadromous means that they go to the ocean, grow in the ocean, and then come back to spawn.
The steelhead have a unique life cycle where they have the ability to spawn and survive. They're not like other anadromous fish that go up and spawn, and that's the end of their life cycle.
So the steelhead are related to the Pacific salmon species, but they don't die after spawning. So every year, thousands of steelhead come up the Columbia, spawn, and then head back to the ocean. What we're doing here is we're collecting them after they spawn and trying to get them ready to spawn again.
Steelhead can spawn, migrate back out to the ocean, and come back up. Historically, that's what they would do, but with the advent of the advancements of the dams, smaller fish can migrate through there fairly easy, but these are large fish that just aren't meant to be passed downstream.
We've gotten pretty good at getting adult salmon and steelhead up fish ladders and to their spawning areas, and we're getting a lot better at getting the young smolts, the young juveniles, out to sea. But it's only in the last few years we've really started to think about how do you get that worn out full-size steelhead, that adult, after it spawned, back downstream.
They rely a lot on the water flow to get back out to the ocean. They like to be swept down. They've used all their energy up to go up and spawn, and we've changed the flows so much that there's a lot of pools out in the rivers rather than a good flow that would flush them out historically. So yeah, there's a lot of problems that we've created for them, and this is one way that we can think of to help them to go back up and do what they naturally would have done in the past. This facility here was designed just for the steelhead kelts. Today what we're doing is some blood workup to see how many of them are actually rematuring and able to go back up and spawn for a second time. The crew here, they do a great job on caring for the fish, and right now what they're doing is netting the fish out, and we're going to net them over to our anesthetic tank where the fish will be measured again, weighed again, and blood will be removed just so we can see how the fish are maturing. They're wild fish, they're not used to human contact, and we try and keep it that way, which is why we keep them covered pretty much throughout the day. They're not like a pet where they'll come running up to you and allow you to touch them. So we built special crowders with soft netting to crowd the fish up tight where we can net them up and dip them out and then handle them in the anesthetic tank. The larger tanks are the original tanks we put here to recondition the fish. Again, they stay in here for 8 to 10 months. There's some special features that we built into the tanks for these large fish. They're adult-sized fish. What fish really look for when they're out in the environment is oxygen. So we've created, where there's no dead spots for oxygen, we've created a flow where they're constantly getting the exercise they need. We're able to drip medication into them to keep the parasites off from them, because again, they're in fresh water, and historically they go to the salt water where salt would take care of a lot of their parasites that they encounter. We medicate them with antibiotics before they go into the tank, and yeah, we do a lot of special things for these fish just to try and give them the benefit and give them a better chance to survive. And not only survive, but the important thing is that we give them all the nutrition, all the help we can give them so they can regenerate their eggs and go back up and spawn for a second time.
But what we found is some fish mature after 1 summer of reconditioning, whereas other fish take 2 years. And we can tell who's who by measuring the plasma hormone level. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all these samples back to our lab, measure plasma estradiol level, and then tell the project managers which fish are maturing, ready to go spawn the next spring, and which fish are not maturing and would need to be held for another year.
Today what's going on when we work up the fish is we have an anesthetic tank where we have a chemical in there that relaxes the fish. It's less stressful on the fish, and stress is very, very bad for fish. So we let them go to sleep, and once they're knocked out, we'll pick them up and measure we have 2 lengths. We measure the fork in their tail to the tip of their nose, and then we do another one from behind their eye to just in front of their tail. A lot of that reasoning for that is because the fish change shape as they're going to spawn, so that measurement's just standard. The next thing we'll do is we'll scan it, because every fish that we collected here has what's called a pit tag inserted into it. So it's its own unique number cycle that is inside the fish. In the shed, what we have in the computer room is just a laptop computer, and our pit tag detector goes right into it. So when we scan it, the pit tag number goes into that. We're able to type in the lengths and the weights, and we can query out any individual fish or any group of fish that we want and see how they're performing. Bill Bosch does an outstanding job of keeping our data straight for us, and we're learning so much, and there's so many questions out there. But with that little shed that we built, it's just full of information on each individual fish. So we'll scan it for its pit tag so we can identify each individual fish. Then we'll weigh the fish to see how it's done as far as increasing his body weight. Today what we're doing is we're taking them out and taking some blood samples to be analyzed for how mature the females are getting. The other thing we're doing is taking a fat meter, see what percentage body fat is in the fish. And again, that just gives us a baseline on how well the fish is performing and how healthy the fish is getting.
Dr. Leah Medeiros is a postdoc on the project. What she's doing is transferring blood that's been collected in syringes into these tubes where it'll be spun down and plasma will be collected. And that's what we use to measure the estradiol level in the plasma of the fish.
I'm Brian Branstetter, and I'm a fisheries biologist with the Columbia River Intertribal Fisheries Commission. My partner, Gordy Simon. We're processing the blood samples that have been collected from the kelts. And as you can see here, there's plasma, red blood cells, plasma. We're siphoning off the plasma to find the concentration of the sex hormone that's in the fish. The plasma is a vehicle that contains the sex hormone. So a lot of the sex hormone is produced in the liver, and what happens is basically the body tells the brain that it's time to start producing gametes, and that's what the sex hormones do. It's a communication vehicle from the organs in the body to the brain of the fish. The kelt is an anadromous steelhead that has spawned once already in nature and has been captured and is going to be turned into a repeat spawner, hopefully. The intent of this program is to help enhance natural reproduction of steelhead via capturing them as kelts and reconditioning them, which just basically means giving them lots of the food that they need to produce mature gametes that can be put back out on the rivers and streams where they came from.
In a month from now, we'll have the results from the blood workup. We'll be able to scan the fish with its pit tag and tell which fish are mature, load them onto a fish truck and put them back out in the river. The immature fish we'll keep here in the hatchery, and I'll keep them for another year and see if they'll do it next year.
Steelhead we're testing for estradiol, which is the fish form of estrogen, and it's actually going to tell us whether or not the fish is maturing, but these fish should be maturing, and we use that as an indicator for whether or not these fish should be released. So if the fish is maturing, we release it back into the river, and then the fish swims upstream with the rest of the population coming upstream and spawns. If they're not maturing, we actually hold them over still and then feed them for the next year and test them again next year to see if they have high estradiol.
The camera highlights in the world of sports. It's out in the wide open spaces of the Pacific Northwest, where the mountains are high and the fish are big, that the old-timers of Isaac Walton's league go in pretty much for the great steelhead trout, a freshwater battler that packs all the punch and gameness of a fighter born to be a champ. By way of filming the thrills of clashing with these fellows, we're working our way here up the Skagit River in the state of Washington. And brother, if it's fishing you want, the stuff is here. So they say if you've never hooked into a steelhead neighbor, why, you ain't never been fishing.
A steelhead is essentially a supercharged rainbow trout and decided it was going to leave its comfortable home in its natal stream, swim to the ocean.
And in the ocean they get big, and they spend either 1 or 2 years in the ocean.
And then it's got to go from its comfort in the ocean all the way back upriver to spawn. And I think that is an amazingly inspirational creature.
For fly fishermen, you know, there's a pretty short list of things that we consider to be the ultimate achievement in fly fishing, and catching a steelhead on a dry fly is always on that list, if not at the top.
Well, it is hard. I would suggest to anybody who wants to come out here and put a fly rod in their hand and go for steelhead that you have some experience with trout first.
I don't think there's another freshwater species like a steelhead. You know, they have this incredibly predatory instinct that when it's triggered is just incredible. The way they take a fly and how aggressive they are to flies.
Learn your presentations, you know, learn that dead drift if you're nymphing, learn how to correctly swing a fly. Learn water. That's, I think, probably one of the biggest things for any angler, whether they're gear fishing or fly fishing. It just takes time to learn holding water.
The dedicated steelhead fisherman relishes challenge and is fueled by failure, I'd say. Now, more steelhead are always better, but steelhead, I think, a big part of the appeal is that not everybody's going to be able to stick with it, and they don't have that drive and passion for fishing that leads them to fish long enough and hard enough to be successful. But there's a certain quality that a successful or experienced steelhead angler has. Some call it stubbornness. I like to think of it more as determination.
It's a really weird thing, this love for steelhead, because they're so extraordinarily difficult to catch. Yesterday was my 5th day of fishing down here this year, and that was the first steelhead I put in my hands.
And at times you feel like you're out there snipe hunting. You know, you might be fishing for a couple of days straight, you know, catch anything.
And steelhead fishermen are weird. The more miserable the conditions are, and the longer they go between fish, they feel like they're better humans because of it, and just tougher than all the other fishermen.
Yeah, sign me up. Unicorn hunt, low chance of success. Let's go.
It's a strange thing. There's some cognitive dissonance at work there, but once you finally get that fish in your hands, it just seems worth it. It's worth all the money and pain and misery that you've gone through in order to just have that fish for a second. And whether you're taking him home and feeding your family or putting him back in the river, it doesn't really matter.
Well, we're in the 3rd week of October down here at Prosser Hatchery, and today's the day that we release all of the steelhead kelts. These fish are being released because they've come back in after spawning for the first time. We reconditioned them and they've rematured, so now they have viable eggs that they can go up there and spawn back in the wild again and have some more offspring for a second time. So it's a big day for these fish. They get to start their migration back up the Yakima River.
Truck. Retain, blue. This is just doing a lookup to what we did when you were here last time. They took blood samples from them. They took them to a lab in Idaho and analyzed the results to tell us whether these fish had mature gonads or immature gonads. And so this is just doing a lookup so that we could find those blood results. And it tells us whether we have a mature fish or an immature fish. If they're immature, we're retaining them for another year of reconditioning. But if they're mature, we're letting go.
Bringing back the steelhead in the Yakima Basin has just been, it's an incredible partnership. And the Yakima Nation has been the biggest driver of it, and it's been pretty neat to see over the last 15 years different groups go from fighting each other to working together to bring back the fish. And yeah, the Yakima Basin's just been a really great success story that way.
When they go back into the Yakima River, it's like they're migrating back upstream to find their natal streams, their home streams, where they're from. So they'll go out there, recognize the Yakima River as their home, and continue to go upstream, find their tributaries that they come from. There's so many tributaries in the Yakima River that hold steelhead. These ones will go back to their home streams, get up in there at the time of spawning this spring, and do their whole cycle again.
These are fish you know have survived. They're well adaptive. They've got strong wild genetics, and you're just giving them a boost so that they can do it a second time or a third time.
After receiving word that another group of kelts were due for release, we headed north to Winthrop. Here, Yakima Nation Fisheries has a similar kelt program operating on the Meadow River. As with the kelts leaving Prosser, these fish were selected for release because their hormone levels indicated a readiness to spawn.
Steelhead are like salmon. They home into the streams they were born in, and in the case of a kelt, they'll go back to the same stream, not only that they were born in, but they spawned in last time. Sometimes you'll see them stray, but generally they're headed right back to their home stream. They really know that home stream.
One of the differences here is that these fish are released by hand. The reason for hand releasing these kelts is that they needed to be placed in two separate locations. The first group by the town of Carlton, and the second just downriver near the town of Pateros.
When you're doing a lot of different things, it's really hard to tell, is there one thing that is causing the increases? But I think it's very fair to say that the kelt reconditioning is a big part of it and helps build on top of all the passage barriers that have been removed, all the habitat work that we've done, all the work they've done in the main stem Columbia. So the kelt reconditioning just really accelerates all those positives and is playing a big part getting the steelhead back. As long as we don't see too many impacts from climate change in summers like 2015, I think we're set to see continued growth in steelhead. We're bringing on more habitat, it's in better condition, we're getting better survival rates. And so I really hope that within a decade we can both be talking about taking them off the Endangered Species Act listings. And if we keep seeing the kinds of improvements we've been seeing, mid-Columbia steelhead might just be the first listed species in the interior Columbia that we get to take off the list. But to do that, we still got a lot of hard work to do, so it's not a done thing yet.